Errol Spence stops Chris Algieri in 5 one-sided rounds. From the very first round, Errol Spence was landing those clean, heavy body shots, which I talked about pre-fight, which a lot of people thought he wouldn't be able to land easily against Algieri. Well, he did. He was able to land him, no problem at all. And just the way he shaped up in the first round, you could tell it was only a matter of time. Second round, more issues for Algieri. He got dropped 3 times in the fight. I believe it was 3. Was it 4 or 3 times? But either way, he won every single round. Dominant display. Algieri had nothing to keep Errol Spence off with. Didn't have the power. Wasn't physically strong enough. Errol Spence just dominated him. Total domination, destruction, and he becomes the first guy to stop Chris Algieri. There's nothing really more I can say about the fight because it went as I expected it to go. I'm surprised that so many people thought that this fight would be competitive, and I'm amazed that there were people picking Chris Algieri to win the fight. Absolutely amazed by that. And don't get it twisted, we all get predictions wrong. I get them wrong, but some fights, to me anyway, they're so clear in terms of who is going to win the fight that I'm totally shocked when people go the other way. And this was one of those occasions. People were banging on about what Algieri did against Amir Khan. What has that got to do with Errol Spence? Errol Spence is a totally different fighter than Amir Khan. You know, they had all this, oh, well, Spence went 12 rounds with Provodnikov. He went 12 rounds with Pacquiao. He gave Khan a tough time. He's going to give Spence a tough time. Why? Doesn't Spence have attributes that those fighters don't have? Yes, he does. Can't he do things those fighters can't do? Yes, he can. You look at Provodnikov. He likes to come forward like Spence does. Provodnikov is a midget. Errol Spence is just as tall as Algieri. So he's not going to have to cover all that distance to be able to touch Algieri. He was able to do it easily because he's the same height, same kind of reach. No problem. Was able to get to him easily. And you should have seen that before the fight. If you'd watched Errol Spence's fights, he comes forward, he cuts off the ring, he lands his body shots. He was going to be able to get to Algieri much quicker than Provodnikov. You should have known that, really and truly, if you've been watching Spence. Manny Pacquiao's a southpaw like Spence, but again, Spence, much taller than Pacquiao. Able to cut the ring off much better than Pacquiao. Pacquiao, if you go look at the Algieri fight, wasn't cutting off the ring very well because Pacquiao's not a pressure fighter. Spence is much better in terms of cutting off the ring than Pacquiao. And of course, Spence is a much better body puncher than Pacquiao. Something, again, I said in my pre-fight vid, Spence is a tremendous body puncher. He's one of the best body punchers in the game at the moment. Very, very good to the body. And comparing Spence to what Khan did against Algieri, I mean, I don't understand the comparison. People are getting caught up with names. Oh, well, Khan had trouble and he's a name. Spence is not a name, so therefore he must have trouble with Algieri. Why? Boxing is not about names. It's about styles and attributes. It's nothing to do with names. Forget about Khan's name. Spence is much bigger than Khan. Much physically stronger. Hits much harder. He's a southpaw. He's better on the front foot. He's a better body puncher. There are so many things, so many attributes. Better at cutting off the ring. There are so many attributes for Errol Spence that he had over Amir Khan going into the Algieri fight. So the Khan performance of Algieri had no bearing whatsoever on what Spence was about to do. And you saw that here. And again, some people are going to get excited now and say, oh my days, Errol Spence is the truth. He's the truth because boxing fans are reactionary. Before the fight, they expected a tough fight for Spence. Now Spence has made it easy. Oh my God, Spence is the truth. Well, his nickname is the truth. He goes by that name, but you shouldn't really see him any differently now as you did than you did before the fight. You know, I mean, if you'd actually watched his fights and weighed it up, this is what you would have expected. You know, so me personally, I don't see him as any different. You know, I'm not looking at this thinking, oh my days, Spence has arrived. This is amazing. No, because when I weighed up the attributes of both fighters and the abilities, this is what I always saw happening. You know, Spence dominating the fight. And that's what did happen. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm, you know, tooting my own horn or rubbing it in or anything like that. I get predictions wrong. You know that. We all do. It's not that. But as I say, certain times I almost feel frustrated before fights, going into certain fights, when it feels like certain fans are not looking at the attributes that I'm talking about. They're not looking at the style the style dynamics that I'm talking about. No matter how much I try and explain it in pre-fight videos, some people just don't want to see it, and they're caught up with the names of certain fighters. Forget about the names. Look at the styles. Look at the attributes. This is a performance by Spence against Algieri that, honestly, I think people should have seen coming a mile off. Wasn't competitive. Going forward, and another thing I said as well in my pre-fight video is that when Spence goes up against a better opponent, I think he's going to be more defensively responsible. Now, Algieri is not the greatest offensive fighter. He has a right hand, but, you know, it's not that great. So this is not really a measure of how Spence's defense would hold up against someone like a Keith Thurman or a Sean Porter or Kell Brook. But I do feel as though he was thinking more about defense in this fight. Even though he wasn't in with a big puncher, he was thinking more carefully, and he wasn't quite as reckless as we've seen him in previous fights against lower level opposition. So going forward, it's going to be interesting seeing Spence in there with some of the better guys. He is mandatory for Kell Brook, but I believe that mandatory is like a year away now. So Spence is going to get in at least 2 more fights between now and then. And assuming he keeps on winning, he can have that showdown with Kell Brook as long as Kell Brook is still champion. So that's going to be interesting. Who would you like to see Errol Spence fight? Would you like to see him fight maybe Pacquiao, Bradley, if either one of them wants to keep fighting? Sean Porter. You've got Keith Thurman out there. You know, Kell Brook, as I mentioned. You got a whole heap of different welterweights. Maybe Jesse Vargas. Lots of different guys you could put Errol Spence in with. As I said before the fight in my pre-fight video, I personally wouldn't want to put Errol Spence in with Kell Brook just yet. I mean, you could, but I'd prefer, if I was, you know, handling him, I'd prefer to keep him away from Brook for now, give him a few more fights to mature and come into his own, and then put him in with Brook. Maybe when the mandatory is actually due. But if you're talking about some of the other guys out there, you know, and styles make fights. So I'm not here saying that Thurman is necessarily better than Kell Brook, although a lot of people would probably say he is. And some people would say that Brook is better than Thurman, you know, whatever. But just from a stylistic point of view, I think Thurman is a more winnable fight at this point in time for Errol Spence than Kell Brook. I think Kell Brook is a bit sharper than Keith Thurman, a bit less wild and a bit more accurate. And I think he's taller. He might be physically stronger as well. So, yeah, that's how I see it. Anyway, drop your comments in the comment section below, people. Let me know how you felt about this performance by Errol Spence. Were you surprised? Were you one of those people who expected Spence to have a tough fight? Were you one of those people who actually picked Algieri to win? Or were you one of those people like me who expected this to be a dominant display by the truth, as he calls himself, Errol Spence? Drop it all in the comment section below, people. Let me know how you feel. And yeah, I know I've been talking about Spence for a while now. One of the things that I've always been impressed with Spence from very early on in his professional career is his attitude. This is a guy who don't respect the big names out there. You know, in terms of him being afraid. He's not afraid of these guys. When he just turned professional as a very young kid, he was in there, from the reports I heard, sparring Mayweather and Broner and people like that and giving them all they could handle with no respect. You know, so many fighters, when they spar Mayweather, professional fighters, experienced fighters, go in there and they give far too much respect to Mayweather and they allow them to dominate. They allow him to dominate them mentally. And you see it in some of the sparring sessions that they've posted on YouTube. But according to the reports, Errol Spence wasn't having none of that. And this is when he was just a very, very young green professional. He weren't having none of that in sparring sessions with Floyd and Adrian Broner. He was trying to give it to them with no respect. And when you've got that kind of attitude, you got the potential to go places, particularly when you got the kind of ability that Spencer's got. So yeah, you know, definitely Spence has been one to watch for me for quite a while now. And I do think he's going to be one of the major players in the welterweight division moving forward. So drop your comments in the comment section below, people. Let me know how you feel. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.